My name is Erika Kohne. I am a licensed mental health counselor who works for 40 Carrots Family Center. 40 Carrots is a nonprofit agency located in Sarasota, Florida, where we offer some mental health services, parenting education within the community, and also a preschool. I'm happy to be talking to you all today and with a conversation really focused on how we can be managing anxiety during this difficult coronavirus time that we're all experiencing together. Um, Before I start talking about how to manage anxiety, I think it's really important that I first spend a moment simply acknowledging and validating what a difficult and trying time this is. This is uncharted territory for just about all of us. And I know that it affects us all in some similar ways, but also some different ways. As a mental health professional, I am hearing a lot of people expressing concerns about struggling with anxiety, and which, all things considering, is something I expect. The natural function of anxiety is to alert us to potential threats and to help mobilize us to respond in ways that are appropriate in order to overcome those threats. And given the uncertainty surrounding the coronavirus, the inevitable ways it impacts our individual lives, and our inability to know an exact timeline as to how it's all going to pan out, I think we're all bound to experience at least some anxiety, if not a lot of anxiety, throughout this experience. In my professional opinion, one of the most useful ways to be managing and reducing anxiety throughout this time is to work to keep your mind occupied, which for the sake of this conversation means really working to stay busy and as productive as possible. Even though for most of us our daily routines have been disrupted and we're limited in what we're allowed to do, we do still have the ability to try to keep ourselves occupied so we're not just sitting around and ruminating on all of our fears. In an effort to keep yourself occupied, a useful strategy might be to work out or outline some day-to-day schedule that's going to help keep you organized and keep you productive. For some, it might be helpful to sit down on a daily basis and make a specified schedule for the day. And others are going to do just fine putting together a routine that works across multiple days. But in your schedule, consider filling each hour of the day with things that you want to get accomplished, and do your best to incorporate not only what has to get done, like that cleaning or cooking or that working from home, but also the things that are healthy or just feel good activities for you, like catching up with loved ones or spending some time on your hobbies. While speaking to the idea of some healthy activities, this would be a good time to promote the idea of including at least some physical activity into your day, or at least some time outside in your day. The good news is the research tells us that exercise in all ways, shapes, and forms is helpful for mental health. Both aerobic exercise, the type that really gets your heart pounding, and anaerobic exercise, the type that doesn't, both serve to help reduce stress and anxiety because they activate your stress response system in a way that leaves it dormant afterwards. And what that means is literally your ability to feel stress is reduced in a way that helps you feel better afterwards. Now, I do realize that no matter how hard you work to stay busy and occupy your mind, you are bound to at least occasionally find yourself ruminating or thinking or worrying about the virus or how it's impacting your life. And if this is something you experience in line with the idea of maintaining a schedule, it can be helpful to literally designate for yourself some worry time each day, where you allot some time where you allow yourself to worry, but otherwise you work to disengage with those worries outside of that time. So for example, you might schedule yourself 15 or 30 minutes of worry time once a day, where in that time you completely allow yourself to explore, feel, stew on all those things that you've been worrying about. But outside of worry time, if you find yourself worrying or ruminating, you simply remind yourself that it's not worry time and you work to occupy your mind with something else. You might find yourself needing to redirect yourself often, but it does get easier with time. And the research suggests that this type of strategy will help reduce that catastrophic thinking that really escalates anxiety. And as you respond to your anxiety, I'd recommend getting into the habit of working to filter out the aspects of your worries that you can't control, and instead to try to really focus on the factors that are within your control. You know, it's really easy to become overwhelmed when we fixate too much on the big picture, or when we really allow ourselves to explore everything that could happen, because really within your mind's imagination, anything could happen, and it'll take you down all these paths of worst case scenario that usually only makes you feel more anxious in the long run. So usually what's more helpful and a little bit more grounding in the moment is to take the time to identify what you can control and to work to abide by those kinds of actions. So for instance, you can't control that your kids aren't in school right now and that maybe it's your role to lead them through virtual school, but you can work to kind of map out and schedule how you're going to run your day in a way that perhaps is smoothest and most productive for everybody in your home. It doesn't mean it's always going to be pleasant or fun, but ultimately will probably be a better use of your time than simply just ruminating on the fact that they're home with you. Other quick examples, you know, you can't control how others are following the safety guidelines, but you can control how you oblige by those recommendations. You won't be able to control the course of the virus, but you can certainly control how you stay informed about the course of the virus. Which does kind of bring me to my last point, if we're talking about managing anxiety. I do encourage you all to work to limit the amount of time you're spending watching news or on social media. The research tells us that watching the news does cause increases in anxiety, even once we've turned the news off. So if you are constantly someone who has the news on in the background or constantly scrolling through news on social media, you are setting yourself up to potentially experience a perpetual state of heightened anxiety, which usually doesn't feel good. So while it is important to stay informed and up to date, do consider limiting your time to read up on the news to perhaps once or twice a day. So in closing, you know, I would like to say that I do think anxiety is somewhat of a given, considering these circumstances. It's probably going to exist for just about all of us. But the idea here is to not so much try to focus on how to get rid of it, but because it's not exceptionally realistic to think of it that way, but instead to more so figure out some ways of how you're going to manage it and how you're going to try to occupy your mind in a way that helps you work outside of just the anxiety. So I hope some of these tips have been helpful for you, and keep in mind, take it day by day. Some days will go easier than others, some will be more challenging than others. But again, we're all in this together. And by taking it kind of one step at a time and some preventative measures to help yourselves, you will get through it. Thanks, everybody.